I can take a few more minutes, of course.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you very
You
much.
bet.
Okay, so what I'm going to walk through now is the October 2014 CCRB Comprehensive Chokehold Study Report. You may be familiar with it. It covers 2009, 2014. They received over 1,000 chokehold complaints. 2014 is the year of Eric Garner's death, so it doesn't.
Right.
It's not analyzing post his death. But I'm going to provide, bear with me, but I'm going to provide the historical background of chokehold policy for the NYPD, unless you know it. And should I
I do
provide
know
it?
it.
Oh, you do know it.
Yeah,
Okay.
I do know it. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. So I'll go over it very briefly instead of reading
Okay.
verbatim.
Okay.
So in 1985, an order was issued, no chokeholds. With that, once again, summarizing. There was an order. Then in 1993, Police Commissioner Ray Kelly issued a policy, which really means it went into the patrol guide and policy manuals. Once again, no chokeholds. And 1995, famously, Chief Timony said,
Timony.
Timony, thank you. Yeah, he basically said, stay the hell away from the neck. That's what the policy says. Stay the hell away from the neck. Now, the specific language in the current patrol guide that was governing during the Eric Garner incident, there's a use of force section, and it says here, I'll just state verbatim, and it's only 2 pages of use of force. So it's not a data download that would overwhelm an officer per se. So it says members of New York City Police Department will not is underscored and capitalized, will not use chokeholds. A chokehold shall include, but is not limited to, any pressure to the throat of windpipe, which may prevent or hinder breathing or reduce intake of air. Keywords are will not use chokehold, and it just gives an example, but is not limited to. I mean, what's your immediate reaction knowing the historical policy context with NYPD, the patrol guide here, and we know what happened with the Eric Garner incident? What's your immediate thoughts?
Eric Garner died as a result of several factors, but I think it's safe to say that the proximate cause was the application of that hold. Now, I won't call that a chokehold simply because the distinction between a carotid sleeper hold and a chokehold and a bar hold the distinctions between and among those are really very, very important. So when I hear a police administrator like Timony say, stay away from the neck. Well, what if, in the vernacular, you're getting your lunch? You are being beaten by a suspect. You are losing consciousness. The police officer is losing consciousness. You can feel the person, or maybe even another person, tugging at your gun, praying that the holster will allow for weapon retention. Holsters are really important. A lot of people don't realize that. But you are now, your life is very much at risk. What if you were able to reach up and render that person unconscious without injuring that person, without killing that person? There is such a hold in the martial arts. There is such a hold in police discipline. And by discipline, I'm talking now about a body of knowledge and a set of skills that go with that. The Kansas City, Missouri Police Department has never lost a human life to a police sleeper hold. They have never been sued for its use. And as a consequence of that, it's been called in many parts of the country the Kansas City method. I don't know that I can illustrate it here, but what I can say is if you'll notice my arm reaching across my neck, that's a bar hold. That can collapse the trachea. That can kill a person. That was the hold that was used on Eric Garner.
Right.
If you watch me slide my arm to the point at which this V between my forearm and my bicep are cradling the carotid artery, you can begin to see how, yes, I can cut off respiration. I can render a person unconscious, but without physical damage to the individual. If
Understood.
I were to hold that long enough, the brain would die. We would have a fatality on our hands.
Sure.
But police officers taught a proper method of that hold. Don't kill people.
Right.
The first deaths associated with the police sleeper hold usually involved what's called positional asphyxiation. In other words, you've used the sleeper hold. The person is now unconscious for about 3 or 4 seconds. That's it. 3, 4, 5 seconds. They're unconscious. You can put them down, pull out the cuffs, and get them cuffed, and stop the threat. So if it's an alternative to lethal force, it seems really silly to me not to keep that in a police officer's arsenal,
Right.
especially dealing with smaller police officers and bigger suspects who can, quite frankly, overpower that police officer.
Right.
The positional asphyxiation was a function, usually of PCP or crack cocaine, somebody heavily under the influence with a pre-existing heart condition, and they were placed face down after the sleeper hold was used, sometimes on a transmission hump in these older police vehicles, and they died. And they died as a result of police action. And they should not have died. There should have been precautions taken. So in San Diego, we kept the police sleeper hold after a controversial death, but we modified it to take into account what I'm talking about.
Right.
So what I saw on the Eric Garner case was a police officer using a hold that should never have been authorized, that in fact, to my knowledge of NYPD policy, was not authorized.
And why do I understand, I followed your line of reasoning, but maybe just to sum up, why do you state that it should not have been used and not authorized? Is it given the fact pattern? Maybe if you could just like summarize that.
Sure. And the fact pattern is you had a whole bunch of cops, relatively speaking, dealing with one individual selling loose cigarettes, much is made of that. Once the arrest is being made for whatever the cause, whatever the criminal charge, uh, that criminal charge in the minds of the public is everything. In the minds of the police officers, it's nothing. Now, what counts is how do I get this individual into custody safely? His safety, my safety, whether or not it was a good arrest, whether or not it was a sound exercise of discretion, we'll deal with later. We'll deal with it in the courts, for example. But under the circumstances, what I saw of the Eric Garner death, we had a police officer who was using a method that has been demonstrated to kill people. It has been demonstrated to take lives. And then I hear NYPD officers saying, we didn't choke him. It wasn't the chokehold. No, I know it wasn't. It was worse.
Yeah, yeah. So I guess my impression and the way I look at it is